There comes a moment in every digital age when we must pause, step back, and confront the uncomfortable truth about the tools we trust with our most intimate moments online. This is that moment. What unfolds in the next several minutes will fundamentally alter how you perceive the browser sitting open on your screen right now, the one you believed was protecting you, shielding your movements across the vastness of the internet. This is not a scare tactic. This is not fear-mongering designed to push you toward panic. This is about revelation, about pulling back the curtain on a silent vulnerability that millions of users worldwide carry with them every single day without the faintest awareness that anything is wrong at all. Picture the scene. You made a decision. Perhaps a colleague mentioned it in passing, or maybe you stumbled across a discussion thread late one night while researching digital privacy. Maybe you simply reached your breaking point with the suffocating weight of traditional browsers draining your device's memory, siphoning battery life, and leaving you with the creeping sensation that something about your online experience had gone terribly, invasively wrong. Whatever the catalyst, you took action. You sought out an alternative. You downloaded the browser built by someone who understands the architecture of the web from its very DNA, a man who authored one of the foundational languages that powers nearly every corner of the internet, who watched his creation evolve into a sophisticated surveillance apparatus, and who decided to fight back. The browser launched nearly a decade ago with a singular, uncompromising vision to restore speed, to guarantee privacy, and to refuse the Faustian bargain that treats users as commodities to be mined and sold. By recent counts, over 80 million individuals worldwide have made the leap, joining what can only be described as a quiet rebellion against the data economy. Yet here is where the narrative fractures, where good intentions collide with incomplete execution. The act of downloading this tool and the act of deploying it correctly exist in two entirely separate universes. Between those 2 points lies a chasm, and within that chasm, your privacy continues to bleed away in steady, invisible streams. Right now, at this very moment, there exists a significant probability that the privacy-focused browser you installed with such optimism is performing almost none of the protective functions it was engineered to provide, not because the technology failed, not because the developers betrayed their mission, but because the crucial configuration steps, the ones that transform potential into reality, were never completed, they were never explained, and so they were never implemented. Let us begin with something that will sting, though only because the truth often does. Open your browser. Look carefully at the address bar where you type your queries, your questions, the searches that reflect your curiosities, your concerns, your middle-of-the-night anxieties about health, relationships, finances, the future. When you enter a term and press return, observe carefully which search engine processes that request. If the answer is the world's dominant search platform, the one built by the advertising conglomerate that has monetized human curiosity more effectively than any entity in history, then you need to absorb a hard reality. You have installed a fortress and left every door wide open with a welcome mat laid out for intruders. The dominant search engine is not, in any meaningful sense, a search engine. It is a data harvesting operation that happens to provide search functionality as the lure. The service costs nothing because the transaction occurs in a different currency entirely. You are not the customer. You are the inventory. Every query you submit, every term you type, every fragment of personal wonder or worry gets archived, analyzed, cross-referenced, and synthesized into an ever-expanding psychological profile. That profile becomes the product. Advertisers purchase access to it, using the insights to manipulate purchasing decisions, political opinions, even emotional states. This is not speculative conspiracy, this is documented business practice, openly described in quarterly earnings reports and advertiser partnerships. So when you route your searches through that platform while using a privacy-focused browser, you have effectively neutralized every protective measure the browser offers. You have circumvented your own defenses. The correction is straightforward, but it demands intentional action. Navigate to your settings. Locate the search engine configuration. Change the default option to the independent search platform developed by the same team that built your browser. This is a genuinely autonomous system, operating its own web index, crawling and categorizing the internet through its own infrastructure, rather than repackaging results from the tech giant. Your searches remain between you and this independent platform. No dossier accumulates. No behavioral model takes shape. The data belongs to you because it is never extracted in the first place. Now, some will object. Some will argue that the independent platform does not yet match the established giant in result quality, and in certain contexts, that observation holds water. The independent option is younger, still refining its algorithms, still expanding its reach. But here is the strategic reality. You retain the ability to manually navigate to the corporate search platform when a specific query demands it. What you must not do is surrender your entire search history by default, passively, without conscious thought, day after day, year after year. Make the independent option your baseline. Use the corporate tool only when necessity truly dictates. That single adjustment vaults you ahead of the vast majority of internet users in terms of functional privacy. Now we turn our attention to the defensive shield system, the mechanism that represents the core technological innovation of this browser, and simultaneously the feature most users profoundly misunderstand. You have undoubtedly noticed the icon that appears in your address bar, a small symbol indicating that protective systems are operating silently in the background, intercepting trackers, blocking advertising networks, shutting down scripts that attempt to follow your digital footprints across domains. Most users observe this icon, feel a moment of reassurance, and never investigate further. This is the critical error. The shield system operates on multiple levels of intensity, and the factory default setting is not the most robust option available. By default, the system employs what might be termed a moderate enforcement posture. It blocks the most obvious offenders, the blatant trackers, the crude advertising mechanisms. But buried in your settings exists an aggressive operational mode that extends protection dramatically further. It catches secondary and tertiary trackers that slip past standard defenses. It blocks broader swaths of advertising infrastructure. It terminates background scripts that operate in the shadows of web pages, silently logging your behavior. Activating this enhanced mode requires perhaps 2 minutes of your time. Enter your settings panel, locate the shield configuration section, and adjust the tracking and advertising blocking parameter from standard enforcement to aggressive enforcement. The transformation in protective capability is immediate and substantial. While you are navigating those settings, you must also address a tracking methodology that operates below the awareness of most internet users, a technique so sophisticated and so pervasive that even those who consider themselves privacy conscious often remain completely ignorant of its existence. It is called browser fingerprinting, and it represents one of the most elegant and insidious surveillance technologies ever deployed at scale. The mechanism works like this. When you visit any website, the code running on that site can silently interrogate dozens of characteristics about your browser environment and hardware configuration, screen resolution and aspect ratio, installed font libraries, graphics processing capabilities, time zone offset, language preferences, how your particular browser renders specific CSS properties. Individually, none of these data points seem remotely personal, but when aggregated and analyzed, they generate a unique signature, a fingerprint that is statistically specific to your exact device and software configuration. Advertising networks can then use this fingerprint to track your movements across the internet, even when you are using virtual private networks, even after clearing all cookies, even while browsing in supposedly private modes. The privacy-focused browser you are using has fingerprinting countermeasures built directly into its architecture, but once again, you must manually enable the strictest protective posture. Return to your settings, navigate to the shield configuration, and set fingerprinting protection to strict mode. In this configuration, the browser randomizes certain identifying characteristics, injecting noise into the data that websites attempt to collect, making it exponentially more difficult to generate a stable, trackable fingerprint. Your digital signature becomes fluid, shifting, difficult to pin down across sessions. This capability does not exist in mainstream browsers. This level of protection is not offered by default in the tools that dominate market share. This is a genuinely differentiated technology, but only if you activate it properly. Now we must confront something uncomfortable. A contradiction that undermines the privacy of countless users who believe they have taken all necessary precautions. A substantial percentage of individuals using this privacy-focused browser are simultaneously logged into accounts managed by the world's largest data collection corporation. They are checking email through that corporation's service. They are watching videos on that corporation's platform. They have cloud storage applications open in adjacent tabs, and they operate under the assumption that because their browser is blocking trackers, their activity remains private. This assumption is dangerously incorrect. When you authenticate into any account operated by a major tech platform, that platform gains the ability to monitor your activity within its own ecosystem regardless of your browser's defensive posture. The shield system blocks third-party tracking mechanisms, the code that corporations plant on external websites to monitor you elsewhere. But when you are operating inside a tech giant's own properties, you are in their territory. They are the first party. They observe what you watch, what you search, what you click, how long you linger, what you skip. This is not a browser failure. This is the fundamental architecture of authenticated web services. If you walk into the giant's house carrying identification, the giant knows you were there. The solution requires creating deliberate compartmentalization. The browser you are using supports multiple user profiles, isolated environments that do not share cookies, history, or authentication tokens. Create one profile dedicated exclusively to the tech giant's services. Use that profile for email and video consumption. Accept that the giant observes that specific activity and consciously limit what occurs within that boundary. But conduct all other browsing, your research, your reading, your personal searches, your financial activities within a completely separate profile where no corporate account exists. This approach contains what the giant knows about you, preventing that knowledge from bleeding into every corner of your digital existence. It is not perfect isolation, but it is a meaningful firewall that most users never construct. There exists within this browser a feature that the overwhelming majority of users have never discovered, never activated, never understood, despite it being one of the most powerful privacy tools available to ordinary individuals. Standard private browsing modes, whether in this browser or any mainstream alternative, provide only local privacy. They prevent your device from storing history. That is the extent of their protection. Your internet service provider still observes every site you visit. Network administrators at your workplace or educational institution still see your traffic. The websites themselves still receive your actual IP address, pinpointing your geographic location with disturbing precision. The advanced private mode available in this browser operates on an entirely different technological foundation. It routes your connection through a distributed network originally developed by naval intelligence researchers to protect sensitive government communications. The system works by encrypting your traffic in multiple layers and bouncing it through a series of volunteer-operated relay servers scattered across the globe. Each relay knows only the address of the previous relay and the next relay in the chain. No single point in the network possesses the complete picture. By the time your request reaches its destination, the trail back to you has been fragmented beyond reconstruction. Journalists operating in hostile territories use this technology to communicate with sources without risking their lives. Whistleblowers use it to expose corruption without facing retaliation. Human rights investigators use it to document atrocities in surveillance states. And this technology, once requiring specialized software and technical expertise, is now integrated directly into your browser, accessible with a single click. You simply open a new private window using the advanced mode, the interface shifts to indicate you are protected, and your connection is immediately routed through the anonymizing network. However, you must understand the limitations to use this tool effectively rather than creating a false sense of security. First, the routing process slows your connection. This is unavoidable given the architecture. Second, you must not authenticate into personal accounts while using this mode. Logging into any account tied to your real identity defeats the entire purpose. Third, for situations involving genuine physical danger, dedicated tools running on hardened operating systems remain the gold standard. But for everyday scenarios, researching sensitive health conditions, exploring controversial topics, browsing without surveillance by internet providers, the advanced private mode represents genuinely accessible, genuinely effective protection for ordinary users with no technical background. The browser also incorporates an economic model that, when first encountered, strikes many users as implausible, which leads them to dismiss it entirely. The traditional advertising ecosystem operates on a simple value exchange. You view advertisements. Advertisers pay money. That money flows to the platforms hosting the ads. Perhaps a small fraction trickles down to content creators. But you, the individual whose attention was purchased, receive nothing except the ads themselves, the tracking mechanisms they deploy, and the unsettling feeling that your devices are eavesdropping on your conversations. This browser attempted to invert that model. If you opt in, you can choose to view a limited number of privacy-respecting advertisements. These appear as simple notifications, not embedded tracking pixels, and when you view them, you earn cryptocurrency specifically created for this purpose. The underlying premise is radical in its simplicity. Your attention has economic value. Instead of that value flowing entirely to corporations, a portion returns to you. The amounts are modest. You will not become wealthy, but the philosophical shift is profound. You become a participant in the value chain rather than a resource to be extracted. The accumulated cryptocurrency can be used to support content creators directly, bypassing platform intermediaries, or withdrawn through partner exchanges. Enabling this system takes minutes. There is an icon in your browser interface. You click it, initiate setup, a wallet is created, and you select how many ads per hour you are comfortable seeing. The notifications arrive unobtrusively. They do not interrupt browsing. They do not track your behavior across sites. And each one you glance at transfers a small fraction of the advertising value directly to you instead of to a distant corporation. Browser extensions represent another critical vulnerability that even sophisticated users frequently mismanage. Extensions add capabilities that browsers do not include by default, and because this browser is built on the same open-source foundation as the market-dominant browser, it supports the vast extension ecosystem available through the major web store. This compatibility is both a strength and a severe risk because a significant percentage of those extensions, including some explicitly marketed as privacy tools, are actively harvesting your data and selling it to brokers. A free virtual private network extension, promising anonymity, may be logging every site you visit and monetizing that information. A free ad blocker may have accepted payment to whitelist certain advertisers, allowing their tracking code through while giving you the illusion of protection. In recent years, researchers uncovered malware hidden inside more than 30 popular extensions with a combined installation base exceeding 75 million users. 75 million individuals who believed they were enhancing their security were actually inviting surveillance directly into their browsing environment. The governing principle must be ruthless minimalism. Every extension you install represents a potential vulnerability. Every extension granted access to your browsing data is a potential leak. Before installing anything, scrutinize the permissions it requests. If a simple utility app demands access to your browsing history, delete it immediately and permanently. If a tool offers free services with no visible revenue model, understand that you are the product being monetized. The extensions worth trusting are those that are open source, independently audited, and operated by entities with no profit incentive. These exist, though they are far outnumbered by predatory alternatives. The fewer extensions you install, the smaller your attack surface becomes. Hidden within this browser exists a menu of experimental features that almost no one ever discovers, capabilities being tested before widespread deployment. Accessing it requires typing a specific command into your address bar. What appears is a list of dozens of advanced options, some highly technical, others immediately useful. Parallel downloading, for instance, splits file downloads across multiple simultaneous connections rather than a single stream, which can triple or quadruple download speeds depending on your connection. Smooth scrolling refines the visual experience. These are not dramatic privacy enhancements, but they are quality of life improvements that remain invisible to users who never learn this menu exists. The browser also includes a playlist feature that allows you to save videos from nearly any website directly within the browser and download them for offline viewing. If you're about to travel somewhere without reliable connectivity, you can queue content in advance and watch it without an internet connection. No third-party application required, no additional subscription. The functionality is simply built in, waiting to be used. There is even an integrated video calling feature built on open source architecture, requiring no account creation for basic calls. If you need to conduct a quick video conversation without handing your information to major platforms, the capability exists within your browser, ready and functional. Now, in the interest of building genuine trust rather than blind advocacy, we must discuss what this browser is not, because presenting any tool as flawless is both dishonest and counterproductive. This browser is built on an open source engine created and maintained by the same tech giant it seeks to protect you from. The development team works diligently to strip out tracking and telemetry code, but the foundational dependency remains. If the mere presence of that corporate code concerns you philosophically, alternatives exist. Browsers built on entirely independent engines, with no connection to the tech giant. The browser also experienced a controversy several years ago when it was discovered that certain URLs were being automatically modified to include affiliate codes, generating referral commissions without user knowledge or consent. The leadership acknowledged the problem publicly, apologized, and removed the feature. But the incident serves as a reminder that even organizations with strong principles make poor decisions, and trust must be continuously verified rather than assumed. The honest assessment is this. When configured correctly, this browser represents one of the most powerful privacy tools available to ordinary individuals who lack specialized technical knowledge. It is not perfect. No browser is. But with Shield set to aggressive mode, fingerprinting protection on strict independent search as default, proper profile separation, advanced private mode for sensitive browsing, minimal trusted extensions, and data sync that avoids corporate servers, the combined protective posture is meaningfully superior to anything mainstream alternatives provide. The crucial insight is this. On the internet, as currently constructed, surveillance is the default. Data collection is the default. Behavioral analysis and monetization are the default. Opting out requires knowledge and action. Most people never take that action, not from apathy, but because no one ever explained what needed to be done in clear, accessible language. That explanation is what this investigation has provided, not to induce paranoia, not to suggest you need to live in digital isolation, but to give you the information necessary to make informed choices about your data, your attention, and your digital existence. These things belong to you. They always have. You simply were never told you had the power to reclaim them. When this report concludes, do not simply return to business as usual. Open your browser, make the changes, adjust the search engine, activate aggressive shields, enable strict fingerprinting protection, create profile separation, audit your extensions ruthlessly. The steps are not complicated. They simply require someone to tell you they exist. Now someone has.